What he failed to mention is he was being dragged by the raft as he's holding his phone upside down in the water.
There's some details that we left out, yes.
Yeah, I have a new tagline for my safety brief in the rafting. Don't put your foot through the rope.
Don't do that.
Oh, don't do that.
Don't put your foot on the rope. Don't put your foot anywhere new.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
All right, welcome to DirectConnect. This is Nick Weber, joined today by Brent Casteganetto and Bryan Carr. How you guys doing?
Very good.
All right. Today we're going to be talking about recent audit experiences, kind of auditing in a post-COVID world now that we're back to normal, whatever that looks like. What kind of stuff have you guys been up to in the audit or dealing with the auditor side of things? Brent, what about you? I think you've had a couple recent engagements, we'll say.
Yeah. Interesting to see how the regions are varied in their approach to an audit. And I'll give you an example that I've seen recently in the last month or so. Client working in a region, they're spread across multiple regions. They're part of the MRRE scenario, and the region has reached out to them 9 months prior to the audit, asked them to complete the evidence request tool in order to use that as part of their compliance oversight planning. So as they're identifying and scoping the audit, they're actually leveraging the ERT and doing some type of micro audit. I don't know what you want to call it, and maybe I'm trapped in a booth and I'm a conspiracy theorist. But no, this is something I've actually seen in recent weeks.
What about you, Bryan? Have you seen similar?
Yeah, kind of similar vein to what Brent, and I think probably a different region, but the scope of a particular audit was limited to, for example, SIP 2, maybe in this case, and the auditor's asking for a bunch of other tabs on the ERT, in this case, to be filled out that don't, everything tangentially relates to SIP 2, right? But that's not, directly involved with the SIP 2 audit. So, even filling out the personnel tab, what does that have to do with SIP 2? And the response was somewhat similar to what Brent described. It was like we want to have a broad picture of what's going on, not necessarily to help them scope the audit, but I think to help them develop some questions and kind of some directions they may want to go. You look at SIP 5, devices in the context of SIP 2, like things get kind of fuzzy there. So we've seen the ERT being used in different ways. That's definitely I think Brent's example is probably one of the more, I won't say extreme, but definitely one that's uncommon that far in advance, and to use it as a scoping mechanism. I think you're right, Brent. There would have to be some kind of assessment. I'm trying to think when you and I'd sit down and do, entity assessments. We're looking, do a risk assessment of some kind. Like if we had that kind of information, you'd have to do a micro audit, like, oh, this doesn't look right. Let's look at that some more, that doesn't sound right. Let's look at that. Like that's an interesting approach.
Not to mention, think of the level of effort that is to put together. That's not not a trivial task, right? It takes a lot of effort, time, and energy to gather that information, put it together in a compelling way, and then deliver it in the appropriate columns, rows, sections, and then the QA process. To have to do that 9 months prior to the audit engagement, it just seems very, very odd. So,
well, we saw a lot of struggles, as they've done revisions to that ERT over the last couple of years. Even things that seem minor, to your point, it's a major deal to a lot of entities how they're managing their data, how they're tracking stuff. Just those minor tweaks, like, oh, we want to add, a column here or whatever. It's a big deal. People really underestimate, especially NERC and the regions, underestimate the burden on the entities for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I know when I was with the PSWG, when I was the vice chair for that out in WEC, that was one of the big things we pushed back on is the WEC audit team. I won't name any names, but some of the guys we used to work with said, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. We're just asking for this information in this format." It's like, well,
right.
For a smaller utility, yeah, that's maybe 8-10 hours of work. But you get one of the massive ones where they have over 1,000 people with SIP access. That might be a month's worth of work to go and retool that, and that's if you have the tool that outputs the way that matches the ERT, which. It bothers me that so many utilities have started to try to manage to that tool that's not approved by anybody other than someone at NERC, maybe.
If anybody knows who approved it, let us know.
I mean, we know where it came from, and I think even those guys would say, "Yeah, this is insane."
Yeah.
But there's no entity oversight on it.
People have built tools or steered their existing tools to outputting to a certain format, and so consider those back-end changes as well.
Yeah. That was. Remember the ERT first came out. That was I thought that the SIP audit team manager there might not get out of that WCAG or that PSWG meeting alive. It was spicy.
Before it was the ERT, right, Nick?
Oh, we know what was the FSAW back when MRO was using it.
Yeah,
FSAW.
For those of you familiar with the FSAW,
remember when you punished us and made us go back to MRO when we got in trouble, Brent?
I mean, it was beautiful. It was early March in Minneapolis. Who wouldn't want to be there?
Yeah.
Oh, Minneapolis wasn't so bad. It was South Dakota when we got the blizzard.
Yep.
But Bryan had to drive me all over Watertown, South Dakota to find a coat because it was sunny in Salt Lake when we left.
Yeah, and miraculously they didn't sell coats at that time of year because, well, winter was over.
Yeah.
Oh, the FSAW, though.
But yeah, that was the precursor to it. The other one is you were talking through kind of the mini audit took me back to the earliest days of that risk-based audit approach or auditing. And I remember we were sitting there going, well, we still do a risk assessment. What's different? And I remember having some of those discussions with the enforcement team, what do they call them? The risk assessment team, the RATs, whatever they call themselves there.
The Rams.
And asking them, how is this not... no, they're a rat. I'm sticking with rat.
Okay.
Like, remember, but we looked at that and said, this is just an audit with another name. It's an audit before the audit, but your internal controls assessment, whichever acronym they've got for it this week, it's an audit. You can call it what you want.
Yeah.
Anytime the regulators come and look at your stuff, it's an audit.
Yep.
I mean, with a very, very few exceptions, and they're usually worse than an audit, in my experience. And events honestly, the other times they're coming and it's not an audit, it's an events analysis or investigation.
Likely,
I'd rather have I'd take the audit over those two. I don't know about you guys, but I know they have their assist teams, but I don't trust that model either because if you follow the money, not to get too far into the firewalling.
All the conspiracies are just boiling to the surface today.
There's a firewall, Nick.
Teeing you up there, Brent.
Nope.
No, you're not going to take it? All right.
No, not going there.
Nope. I've gone too far in my isolation booth here. I think I've reached my limit.
Too far down the rabbit hole. All right.
Indeed.
It's pretty awesome. I think on talking about audit approach, I'll kick off kind of on another topic is, we've seen obviously some pretty wild audit scopes. By wild, I mean very limited, which, to some folks is a good thing. To others, it's not. And I don't know that I have an opinion one way or another. I think more of my issue is how they arrive at such a pared down scope. How that's contrived. I know there's an official process and evaluations, again, audits, mini audits, whatever. But I find it interesting, if they're truly trying to drill down on areas of risk, and they're scoping an audit very narrowly, that they land on some of the standards they land on, right? Some that are not traditionally viewed as high risk or highly violated or frequently violated kind of standards. Some of those audit scopes have been very interesting. I don't know if others have seen that around, but definitely in a couple of regions we have a client gets the audit scope and we go, huh? First of all, that's it, and then it's why those, and we can't back into that logically. So there's got to be some magic sauce behind the scenes that's leading them to that conclusion.
I don't know if there's a good answer to it because I've yet to hear any sort of explanation that would make me remotely think it's okay for an auditor not to look at, for SIP standards, SIP 2, SIP 5, SIP 6. If you're not looking at the foundation and the perimeters, it's too many bad things can happen if you whiff on one of those three, particularly SIP 2. I think you can fight through
years ago.
Yeah,
nothing changed. Looked at it 3 years ago. I don't buy that either.
yeah, because I was not at a substation last week where they were building a brand new line that was going to completely differentiate the entire system in 4 years from where it is today. That doesn't happen ever.
No.
Nobody ever buys a power plant.
Yeah, nobody ever finds a new substation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, those are some. I just don't. I haven't heard a good excuse for that other than risk-based being thrown out, and then asking for the definition of risk-based without using the terms risk or based. I've yet to hear that from anyone in the ERO enterprise.
Yeah, that's the challenging thing is, we have no insight into that, and we've understood that process. We know that process, but right now the outputs that we're seeing with the limited audit scopes, I'm seeing it too with clients I work with, and just things that I would consider, and most would consider, lower risk areas. It seems very interesting. I have seen them dig in significantly deeper into those specific standards. Now that they do have the time, there definitely a depth that we have not seen in some of the regions at some of their evaluation of evidence. So burden of proof is a little bit tougher. Level of audit evidence, it takes a little bit longer to kind of go through that and walk through it with them because they're going to be methodical with these lower scoped audits.
Yeah, that's a funny thought, because I remember, we always joke about spare time as an auditor is a bad thing, right? We've all sat in that chair, and you got a little extra time to look at something a little more closely. Oftentimes doesn't bode well for the entity, because let's be honest, if you dig hard enough in just about any standard, you're gonna find an issue.
Yep.
It's just how it is. Everybody knows that. Nobody wants to say it, so here I am saying it. But if you had enough time and dug hard enough in any standard, any requirement for any particular entity, you could find an issue if you're really, really looking for it. So that's like I say, potentially one of the downsides to these shorter scope audit or smaller scope audits. Like you were saying, Brent, they're drilling in a lot deeper on a lot of that stuff.
On the physical side, we're seeing more spot checks. Seeing those used. I don't know if we had a spot check the entire time that I was at WEC. We didn't have time to do one. And that was ultimately what it came down to.
Yeah, we did a couple.
There were a couple. But it was very limited.
Yeah,
very limited.
But I'm seeing a lot more of that.
It's more of a phone interview, and that was about it.
Yeah.
At that time.
But that's one of the things I know that when I'm working with clients, I'm cautioning is that just because your audit was done, don't think you got 3 years now. Especially with this reorg in WEC where they're doing. I'm curious. The skeptic in me has all kinds of red flags popping, but I also can see some opportunity for, I think, what Deb McIndeffer's vision there is to really get a lot better at this and actually start to, by having a smaller group focused on a smaller set of entities, actually get more of that continuity audit over audit where maybe they can rely on what they saw 3 years ago and kick it off with a what's changed in 3 years.
Yeah.
And then maybe a cursory look, and then having that physical security team that she's got with Brady Phelps leading now kind of popping around, and whatever they turn up, I'm sure is going to feed back to those other 3 teams. So if they're on a SIP 14 or a SIP 6 or even a SIP 3 low impact spot check and run into something, I can't imagine that's not going to be a phone call back to Stacia or Tom or the third team lead to be named later. Hey, you got to come take a look at our friends here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But also, it makes me feel kind of like, Bryan, I know you and I were somewhat involved in the audit that never ended for a while there. Was that a 5-year, twice a year audit? The continuous monitoring audit? I mean,
yeah.
I think the other piece that's been
monitoring.
that model has now been tested and to a degree proven. So I think if you're on the high risk or bad kids list, I think that's gone from more of an empty threat to they figured it out.
Yeah,
it's not fun for anyone, but 2 or 3 standards at a time every 6 months.
Yeah, it's a
that audit.
Well, and I think
2018 to 22.
Yeah, but I think also it's be interesting to see if they're really going back. And I haven't done the analysis and seen where the focus has been in this context. And what I'm saying is, you have an entity that has consistent issues in pick a standard, whatever. Are they going back and targeting those issues to see if they've really been resolved? Or are they just taking the mitigation plan at face value, the entity saying, yep, we did all this fancy stuff, here's some neat new paperwork, but actually going back the following year and poking again on that spot, saying, "Oh, is it really?" and testing that. I don't know that that's happening. That's what I would like to kind of see happen. For the betterment of the industry, is you identify a problem, yeah, they'll fix it, but nobody goes back and look at it for another 3 years or even longer before somebody pokes at that again.
I think that's part of the intent with this new arrangement at WEC.
Yeah.
We'll see. Devil's in the details, and we'll see.
Yeah.
The enemy always gets a vote, so we'll see what happens once the rubber hits the road on that. But
It's one of your favorite sayings.
the auditor gets a vote.
The enemy gets a vote.
Yeah, lots of changes. I'd love to get into the SIP 14 tech conference, but I'm not there. I'm not ready yet.
Not enough time has passed since
I don't know that we have enough of a bleep button for that.
Hold it over to next week. Hold it over.
We'll hold that one for the
Maybe.
next
I
one.
mean,
That's kind of get into that conspiracy theory.
Well, I can join you. I don't know if I'll have my booth, but
We'll send you back to Salt Lake for the booth.
So yeah, there definitely some SIP 14 things I know Nick wants to talk about. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I know we've definitely seen a different audit approach, kind of going back to the audit side on that. And I think we've talked about that quite a bit, but definitely seeing auditors within that realm get well beyond the language of the standard. And I think I've seen that bleed over into some of the other stuff too, into the purpose and intent of the standard, which I still don't know how you audit to that. I don't know how that holds up at all, but
Yeah.
I remember that was one of the things when we were looking at SIP 14, Bryan, when it first came out and we were trying to figure the audit approach. There was a certain amount of, we're going to call a violation we know might get dismissed, but we're going to challenge you to stand up publicly and defend a bad decision if you truly have a bad decision.
That's true.
But I don't know, what I'm seeing there is auditing to opinion. But that's the way the standard was written, and no one to blame but the drafting team on that one, and everyone who hasn't put in a SAR since then. So I think we're all at fault to a degree on that one. But I think that was the advice that we gave way back when, was flexibility cuts both ways. Keep that in mind if you're on a drafting team.
Yeah,
But,
or providing comments back. I mean, that's
yeah.
There's obviously plenty of opportunity whether they listen to it or not. But you see flexibility. That's not necessarily a good thing.
Any other thoughts for what we're seeing in the audit world or out of the regions, kind of that post-COVID back on the road piece?
So, some of the old things are starting to crop back up. Like I think we touched on a previous episode, but the number of DRs that you're getting, some of that stuff is still touted out there. We only had 18 data requests in our auditor. Like there's this imaginary metric that maybe 15 years ago had some merit, but for a very long time really doesn't hold a lot of water. So if there's people still holding on to that urban legend that the lower DR count that you have is good, the higher DR count that you have is bad. It varies so widely now, depending on a lot of different factors, that don't use that as a metric you're reporting to your management. Like, yeah, we made it through this audit with 6 DRs. Okay, it was 2 requirements in your audit. Woohoo! So yeah, I don't know, that one I still see coming up, just as a pet peeve, I guess we can call it. There's a lot of people marching to low number of DRs, and like their job as a compliance manager or anything else is tied to this. Hey, we got out of this with a very low number of data requests. Either you got lucky, the auditors were tired, lots of different things. Lots of different things can play into that data request number. So,
Brent, anything from you?
Nothing else from me. It's
I'm
been a
just glad
fun
to
discussion. It's taken me back.
I'm just glad to see that unlike some of our friends who jumped into a river without a life jacket, you made it back out. So
Made
yeah,
it safely.
well
Made
done.
it safely. How's the leg, Bryan?
Oh, it's doing good. Leg's healing up good. You
Glad to hear it.
you don't know what we're talking about, you need to go back and watch our last On Target, right?
the on target, yeah.
Yeah, it was
We had a good time.
pretty epic. It was pretty epic. I came
And
back.
if you ever want to go whitewater rafting on the salmon, give me a call.
Yeah.
I'll be down there in about 4 hours. I can't guarantee you won't end up with a bruise the face of Jesus, but you have a good story.
Nick's a great guy. He'll take you through the rapids backwards. It's a great experience.
Or sideways, even sideways sometimes.
I just want to know what kind of stickum you had on your hand, because the NFL banned it for your phone staying on when you went through.
Oh, I did. I had the pine tar on it. So for those that don't know, again, go back and watch the On Target. But I was filming as we were going through a rapid because I realized we weren't catching any footage, and I have one of those pop sockets on my phone. So I had, apparently, as I went overboard, I had the death grip on the phone as I went over, and I came up with it. And it's a testament to both the pop socket and the waterproof claims of the iPhone that it survived.
What he failed to mention is he was being dragged by the raft as he's holding his phone upside down in the water.
There's some details that we left out, yes.
Yeah, I have a new tagline for my safety brief in the rafting. Don't put your foot through the rope.
Don't do that.
Oh, don't do that.
Don't put your foot on the rope. Don't put your foot anywhere new.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Stop doing stupid stuff. It's going on.
Yeah, there we go. That's got to be it. That and the other. Well, we have the other shirt too, but we can't talk about that one yet.
No, that's Archer After Dark. We
gotta save that one. We gotta save Katrina's shirt for another time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great time. Take care, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you.
Stay up to date on all the videos we release here at Archer by clicking on the subscribe button. Click on the bell to be notified right away when we release new videos. If you know of a topic or someone you think we should talk to on DirectConnect, please let us know in the comments below.